So now we are done with fetching the chat rooms and even subscribing to it in the chat rooms module. But then the intention is to actually show it in a table view. So whatever we have received here as a subscription right now, we are going to actually show it in the table view. So whatever subscriptions that we have right now here, we are going to move it to the output side. Also, we need to include we need to include a dependency called Rx data sources. That is the community build binding architecture for table view using RxSwift. So that's what we are going to include as a first thing right now. Let's open our cat file and then include that. So I think I already have, I'm just going to use whatever I'm using for the other my working project where I have a card file. Just going to use that. So it's Rx data sources 4 is the latest one. I'm going to use that, and all that I need to do is to run update platform iOS. So even you can selectively include your card file, like if something is, you just need to include, let's say Rx data sources, you can directly include that. So just by placing the Rx data sources along with the update code, whatever cartridge update that you are doing. So this is getting installed right now. I guess it's not going to take much time, and meanwhile we can include the dependency which is related to Rx data sources to our cartridge run script. We need to include similar thing for this one, so it should be Rx data source dot framework. Rx data sources dot framework. There are a couple of things we need to add, so I'll just add both of them. One is this Rx data sources and the output side as well. Sorry, Rx data sources, and one more thing gets added along with it called differentiator. I guess it's called differentiator. It's again a framework which gets added, which allows you to differentiate between sections or cells. So let me also include that within the build phases. I'm just going to use it whatever I have from my project. So one more, this is called differentiator dot framework. These two things are what will be used by Rx data sources. I'm including both of them. So this is my dependency for Rx data sources included right now. So this is one important thing you need to do when you are including any cartridge related frameworks. So that's done. So you have these two, Rx data sources and differentiated, added. Now let me go back. I think it should be included. Okay, it's still building. Let's wait for that. It should not take much time actually. Well, that's done, but I should have made this instead of making it compile everything. Rx data sources is what I should have done instead of doing for the whole thing. So maybe that whole building process would not have happened. So anyway, that's done. So let's move on with the implementation. So I have right now Rx data sources available. I'm going to include it for my chat rooms right now. So go to the cartridge Rx data sources, and maybe the differentiator. These two things is what I'm gonna use. Include that, and come to the chat room section. So now my dependency is available. So within the chat rooms presenter is where everything starts. Now implementation is pretty easy, because once you implement Rx data sources, all that you need to do is have the view model and then start binding with your table view. So first thing first, let's move this. This is going to be my data source. So I'm going to move it closer to the output side. So output is going to be a section. So it's going to ask me to include with this is a static function, so I need to then pass use cases to the static function. So use cases dot output dot chatrooms. I don't need this subscribe debug. Let's get rid of all that. All that I need to do is to change it to a driver, not yet, but then I'm just going to keep it like that because that's what is going to get translated to an output sections. So I'm going to pass use case dot section dot use cases to this. Now this needs to be moved up because it's asking instantiation setting before it's being used, so I'm just moving that up. So now I need sections. So sections is going to come from Rx data sources. So for that I need to start creating something called as a view models for the chat rooms. So for that I'm gonna refer my existing code, which is I need anyway a chat room view model. First thing is that I need a chat room view model. It's going to be a structure. Chat room view model is what is going to represent each and every cell that you're going to have, and I'm going to include all the relevant fields required for it. Like I'm going to represent it using a title, and I'm going to have a timestamp field, which is going to be at a later point the timestamp of the last received message, but currently I don't have it, so I'm going to just show the timestamp of the chat rooms created date. That's going to be that. Now again I'm going to have one more thing called as status message, which can be a combination of different things. Like it can be the last received message, it can be the user typing message, like you see in WhatsApp or something where somebody is typing, then instead of the last message shown, it starts showing is typing, the user is typing something. Within a group it can also show who is typing. So that's what this status message, I've just kept it as status message because it can be anything. Right now it's going to be the description of the chat room, so that's what I'm gonna use right now. So these things, because these are going to be dynamic in nature. Title, I'm not hoping the title of a chat room is going to change a lot, but then you can even give an option for a user to change it at later point. Let's say if I'm an owner of a chat room, if I change it, that needs to get reflected real time at wherever it is being consumed, if that is a chat room. So I'm not doing that yet, but I'm just going to keep it as a static field. But then timestamp, status message, and one more thing called unread count. I'm going to include unread count as a field. At least these three fields are going to be dynamic in nature. Unread count can also be like once you start receiving new messages, it needs to show unread count. So because these are dynamic in nature, I'm going to change these properties to something which is more dynamic. So I'm going to call it as, I'm going to make it a behavior relay. So we need to include Rx Coco for that, and I'm going to make it as a behavior relay. This is timestamp. I'm going to keep it as string, and I'm going to instantiate that behavior relay with an initial value of empty, or this. Similarly, I'm gonna keep even status message as a behavior relay. I'm not going to be making it nil. You will understand why these are behavior relays once we start binding it, when we start receiving dynamic messages. Let's say a new message received becomes the timestamp, or if somebody is typing, that becomes the status message, some things like that. And even these is going to be an integer of unread count. I'm going to keep it 0 for the time being. So that those are my view model fields for the time's sake. And now I'm going to extend this so that you can instantiate this using the models, which are like Chatroom is a model that you have. So we can instantiate this Chatroom view model using that model. So I'm going to init that using a model. Model is Chatroom, and I'm going to use that to at least instantiate this for the time's sake with some values, like title is going to be the chat room name, model dot title, it's going to be the name of the chat room, and I'm going to make the status message accept the model the chat room's description, or at least I think it is called subject. It's just some description of what that chat room is all about. This is going to change later, but then I'm going to keep it as subject right now. And one more thing, like the timestamp, I'm just going to make it when was it created. Right now it comes back like in a way something like this, created at, it's going to be a timestamp field. I want to make it user friendly, representable type, like times ago, like 2 days ago, a month ago, 5 hours ago, a minute ago, something like that. So for that I'm going to use a utility function. I'm just going to grab something from the internet itself. I'm just going to use it like without any shame, because it's just a utility function. So I'm going to create an extension called date string, date plus extension. It's a, there are different Stack Overflow, you go and you check for times ago how to do that. There are so many help available there. I'm just going to use that extension, date plus extension. I'm going to just call it as date plus extension, and blindly going to copy something which I'm going to I have already found in Stack Overflow. So this is my format. Created timestamp format is this. If you look at it, it's like YYYYMMDD with it's more like this format is what I am expecting from the server. So I'm just going to keep it as a date format, and then I'm going to also have an extension for string. I think I already have an extension, so I'm just going to move this within that string extension. Already have an extension for convert to date. I can just move it here. So it's nothing but if you identify that a string is a date, you try to convert it into a date and then just call that directly on the string. So that's one thing. And then I have another function called time ago since now, which converts your date to a representation like a while ago, a year ago, month ago. This is something very available in Stack Overflow. I just picked it up. So this is more like converting your date to a representable format like this. So this is what I'm going to use as extensions. So all that now I need to do here is the timestamp, whatever I have, I'm just going to say timestamp is going to accept what is my model dot what is the value. It is going to be the created at is the date of creation of my chat room, and then I'm just going to call convert to date. I'm converting that string to a date format, and then I'm just going to call times ago since now. That is a function I included here, times ago since now. So I'm just chaining that and creating a string representation for that date. And if nothing is available, I'm just going to say unknown date, maybe unknown. I'm just keeping it as unknown. So that's my accepted date. I'm just translating that into a human representation, like whatever I can understand instead of those. So that's my view model. So view model's intention is to convert your data into user experience representation data. So that's what happened here. And now my view model is almost ready. I just need to now start binding it to my sections. So before that I need to introduce something called as a section for this. So I'm just going to introduce a section. I'm creating a struct. I'm just going to call it Chatroom section. So each and every chat room will be represented by, will come under this section, Chatroom section. So it can have multiple sections, but for this use case I'm just going to have one section and every chat room coming under that. So chat room section, we need to have a header for that. I'm going to keep it as integer because I'm not going to have any title for the header for this episode. But then let's say if you in the future let's say if you are actually going to segregate the chat rooms based on some some sections, let's say like a category or something, then it makes then sense that we define it as a string and then start showing that category section separately. So at least in this episodes we are not doing that. So let's keep creating. This item is going to be something we need to define within the chatroom section. So let's create the chatroom section extension, chatrooms sections extension, and define the init. Also we need to define what is the item. So for that we need to, we don't have a definition for what is this item for the chatroom section. For that we need to define an extension again for chatroom view model and define the identity. First thing is type aliasing of item, which is going to be the chatroom view model itself. That is my item. I'm doing a type definition for that. And then we also need an identity. These are some of the basic things which are required for creating the Rx data sources. Okay, this is not what it's not an extension for chatroom view model. It's an extension for chatroom section. So for chatroom section now needs to implement animatable section model type. So that is a basic construct for creating a chatroom. Type aliasing chatroom, that is the basic structure required for Rx data sources. Type aliasing item is something which requires you to tell the section what is going to be the item. That is going to be the chatroom view model. And also the identity, what is it that will define the chatroom section headers. So I'm going to keep that as int, and definition is done. Now we need to implement the identity, which is going to be the header, and an init for instantiating chatroom section items. These are common requirements to create your sections. Extension init header is defined. Type identifiable type needs to conform to this. So we need to implement chatroom view models extension to actually implement identifiable type and equatable. So let's do that. Extension chatroom view model identifiable type and equatable. So this is what differentiates one cell with the other when it is getting loaded. Type alias identity. What is the identity for your each cell, which is chatroom view model? That is going to be your ID. And because we are also implementing equatable, we need to have the equatable implementation. Static function LHS chatroom view model and RHS, comparing two view models. Returns bool, return LHS.id. This is what we are comparing on, RHS.id. So that is my implementation for equatable for the chatroom view model. So now each and every cell will be compared based on the ID, and that's the equatable for us. So now this is animatable section model type. Whatever item that we had defined had to conform to identifiable type and equatable. So that's the reason it's not giving any more error. So let's do the implementation for the init. So self is the original. These are basic normal structure for creating your Chatroom sections, which is implementing animatable section model type. So init will look like what is the section and what are the what are the items associated to that. So you are setting self to whatever you are passing as a section, and the items as in our case it's going to be this. Chatrooms is going to be the items which will get translated to the Chatroom view model. This is right now an array of Chatrooms. So one change that we need to write, maybe you can do here, is we can convert this into a set so that you don't duplicate things. So I'm just going to make these as sets. Whatever we are going to return back is going to be set, avoiding duplicate. So it's going to give you error. It's going to because I made it as a set, it needs the Chatroom to be conforming to equatable, again hashable. So let's implement that hashable for Chatroom. Go to the model. So we are already in Chatroom. Give one more extension. Chatroom should implement hashable. So for that, the requirement is that Chatroom should implement equatable as well as hashable. Two things needs to happen. Chatroom equatable. So for equatable, it's similar to what we did earlier. Static function LHS and RHS. LHS is Chatroom, RHS also Chatroom, and this needs to return a boolean, and we are comparing LHS.id, I think it's ID, to RHS ID. So that's the comparable part, the equatable part. Method must be declared public because it's a public one, and hashable also needs to confirm. So for hashable, you have a function now called hash, where you need to just call hasher.combine what is the value on ID is what we will do the hashable. So that's how the new implementation of hashable looks like. Implement hashable, pass what needs to be combined to hash it. You can even pass multiple things if you need to. Let's say if it needs to be hashed according to name, subject and everything, but I'm just keeping it as ID for this case. So now our set is ready because it can accept a hashable. So because now this is accepting a set, we need to modify this, or even yeah, we can pass this as a set right now. So array accepting a set. So this is the change I did right now. So observable becomes a set, so it's triggering a change here because we had made it as a array over here. So we also need to make it as a set. So this becomes a set now. So this will avoid duplicates being created. That's done. So this is now a set. Whatever we have here is a set, and we are going to create view models out of this one. So our implementation of Chatroom view model and the sections is ready. You have the Chatroom view model which can accept the values, use the model to create a view model. Also it is conforming to identifiable type, which can now be used to create sections. So ultimately we need to finally create a section for binding with the table view. So let's include that section for binding. Go to my presenter, and within the output, presenter's output, I'm going to create something called as sections, which is going to be a driver of an array of Chatroom sections. Chatrooms section. So this is what my driver expects, so I'm going to create that. So now I need to create the Chatrooms view model sections. So I'm just going to map this whatever I get here, I'm going to map and convert that into a view model. So map gives me, okay, I can just use it. So this is accepting Chatroom accepts a model to create the view model. So these are models array. I can always say map that to Chatroom. Okay, I need to have a function to create. So let me create one thing called a build function. I don't have it yet, I guess. Yeah, let me create a function. Within this function called build, using an array of models, it's going to be a set of Chatroom, and it returns an array of Chatroom view model. So that's my builder. I'm going to keep it as a static function, and what it does is it accepts the view model and then does a compact map and then converts that into a view model using models. $0 is going to be the model, because compact map, each and every model elements taken and created as a view model, and this creates an array of Chatroom view models. That is what I'm returning here. So I'm just going to use this builder over here, Chatroom view model dot build function passing models. So it's just that the Chatroom's set is accepted here through these models, which is this is dependency identification. Like, this is the function I need to call to create this. So dependency is identified here. This models, if I pass in a set of Chatrooms, it creates you an array of Chatroom view model. That's what is happening here. And once you map that, you see that it's an array of Chatroom view model. And then I'm going to use this to create my section now. So section, we already have something like an original section dot items. It accepts an array of item. This item in turn is nothing but a Chatroom view model array. We already created Chatroom array view model. Now it all needs is a section to be created, and section accepts an array of this. So this is my sections unit. I'm going to pass something over here. So let's do that now. Do I have a function called sections? Okay, let's create an extension even for that. So Chatroom sections init is there. Also, let's create an extension, Chatrooms section accepting init items, which is going to be an array of item, to create self.init what are the parameters required? Cannot invoke with no arguments. So it needs so we already know that Chatroom section init where is that Chatroom section? Chatroom section struct needs a header and items as two parameters. So we can pass the header which is again an integer. So I can just pass 0 as parameter, and the items we already are passing here. So that's my init. Also, if I need to create again, I'm gonna create a function to create all the sections required. So sections, again, if you see, is an array. Sections, Chatroom section is an array which is expected by the table view, because table view can show multiple sections, and within each section it can have items like Chatroom view model as items. So that's what we are doing here. So I'm just going to create a function called sections using so sections is going to get created using the items. So using items, which is nothing but our items, because we just have one section right now. We are only creating one section, Chatrooms section. We are just going to create one section, add all the items to that, and then pass that back. So I'm just going to say return Chatroom section. So this is the init it's going to use. I'm going to pass items. That's it, and that will create me, because it is expecting an array, I'm just going to return it as an array. But if you are to create multiple sections, then you have to actually create multiple. But because this is only expecting one section in our tutorial, I'm just creating one section and passing it within an array and passing it back. So this sections is going to be a static function within Chatroom section. So I'm just going to call here the same thing like Chatroom section. This is again an array of view models which can be used to build these sections. So using items is nothing but, if you go there, items is sections, items is nothing but an array of items, and item is a Chatroom view model. So that will be used to create this. Now you have an array of sections created. All that we now need to do is to convert that into a driver. Is it all? Yeah. So as driver, and if there is an error, just return an empty array, and we can just pass this as the sections. Hope that's understood. So all that the Rx data sources require to bind a table view is this sections, which should implement something like an animatable section type, or there are different kinds of section types, I guess. One is animatable section type. I guess that's what is available. Okay, so that is what it needs to conform to. Animatable section type allows you to add some animations. I guess there is something called as readable section type or something. I don't remember much, but then there is one more thing available. Section types. Animatable section type. I guess differentiator. I guess it's reload section type or something, where it does not have any animation associated. So this is animatable section type I have added here for this section, which needs to conform to some things like what is the item that you are trying to add, which should be, each section needs to have an item like a Chatroom view model. What is the identity of your section, which is actually the header. So there are only two properties here. One is header and one is the item. So header is what the identifier for this is. Similarly, your Chatroom view model needs to implement identifiable type and equatable. So what is that Chatroom which can identify itself? It is the ID which you pass, or which is the ID of a Chatroom, which is the identifiable type. So once you compare two Chatrooms, what is that make it comparable? It is the ID again. So that's how you implement this, and using that. So the translation happened here is like you know this is returning an array or a set of Chatrooms. You're using that to build your an array of Chatroom view models. Using that Chatroom view models, you are creating sections. So sections is created and you make it as a driver and passing it to your view through this output of the presenter. So that's all done right now. I guess it's only one error. What is that error? Observable set. Maybe I rebuild. Okay, some things are missing, looks like. Chatrooms needs view use case. Do I have use cases added? Chatrooms dependencies does not have use case. Let me add that. Use case. One error is that I guess we are good. So Chatrooms is created. All that we need to do is to consume that within the view controller. So before that, TableView is created, but then we need the cells to be created for that. Let's create the cells quickly. Not this. So I'm just going to call it as Chatroom cell. Chatroom cell. Create the XIB as well. Add it within Chatrooms. And Chatroom cell, go to the Chatroom view. I'm going to keep a height of maybe 80, I guess. Or is it 90? Let me keep 90 and let me refer what is the height I kept. Chatroom cell. I guess it's 90, yes. So I'm going to, maybe I can just grab whatever I have without wasting much effort. All that, whatever I have added. No. Okay, let me add it one by one. Chatroom cell, content view, yes. So I'm going to, it's going to look something like this. Maybe I can just bring it to its correct positions. Leading space, I think it was 15, and trailing has to be 15 again on the right side. Trailing space, what? And it has to be center aligned to the content view. So I think vertical, yeah, I guess all of it is fine. Okay, this has to also be center aligned. Perfect, that's my cell. It's simple as that. And I'm going to include these associations. This is going to be the chat, what should I call it? Chatroom image view. This is going to be the title label. This is going to be the status label. Like I was saying, it can be anything, like it can be typing, user is typing or something. This is going to always be timestamp label. And last messages have captured. This is going to be 100 count label. Pretty much whatever we have is there. Now cell's job is done. I'm gonna implement things required here. So I need a configure function, configure, and so it's going to use the view model. Using view model is going to be Chatroom view model. So I'm just going to use the Chatroom view model's values to set these. View model dot title self dot rest of the things are all using. So I know this view model is going to have, rest of the things are behavior relay except for the title. So I'm going to status message, I'm just going to say as driver dot drive, what is that, status, I'm going to use the self dot status label dot rx dot text to drive it. Dispose by bag, so it's going to be a reuse bag, not the regular bag, because reusable table, if you don't dispose it and recreate it, then it's going to retain that observable. So one of the practices that you follow in prepare for your reuse, that is when this is when an end of or whenever a new cell is created, reused, this gets triggered. So always you have to create your dispose bag within this one. So I'm just going to call it as reuse bag, and I'm just going to make it private set so that it's also available to access from outside this table. Private set reuse bag equal to dispose bag. So we need to include RxSwift dispose bag reuse bag, and that's it. Reuse bag. Also you need to instantiate this one within this reuse bag, so that every time reuse happens, it creates an instance of reuse bag and the older one gets destroyed. So along with that, all the subscriptions gets destroyed. Otherwise you will have a nightmare with multiple triggers happening from here. Let's say if you are actually tapping on something from a cell, if you don't do this, you will get multiple callbacks for the earlier cells as well. So this is one way of handling that. So this is one practice you should follow always. And also you should make sure that this is accessible, this reuse bag is accessible from the view controller as well. So one practice. So this cell is ready, configure function is ready. We have we just need to create that cell from the view controller. Now going to the view controller, I'm going to create the data source required to bind. First thing first, set within the setup binding, within the setup binding we need to bind it with the table view. So self dot presenter dot output dot sections is available. I just need to drive that with the table view dot rx dot data source, with rx dot items, passing the data source. So items data source, pass the data source, which is what we need to create right now. We don't have a data source. Sections is created. We need to create a data source. So that is pretty simple. Go to maybe create over here, private lazy var data source equals rx. So we need to include rx data sources, and let's include RxSwift, Rx Coco, and Rx data sources here, and then make this Rx table view section reload data source, and specify the section table view section. Chatroom section is our table view section, which in turn creates the missing things, the configure cell which is needed. So configure cell gives us a structure. We can maybe create it like this. So that's my configure cell, and we can pass at least 4 things are needed here, and out of those 4, 3 are required. This is going to be the data source, I guess, which we don't need. Table view is the second one. 4 parameters, table view, and then index path, and finally the item, which is nothing but our view model. And we might need access to weak self to the do we need weak self? I don't think that's needed yet. So now we need to return a cell, UI table view cell. I think it's not going to give an error right now. So this is the data source which is needed over here. Once that is passed, everything is fine. But then we need to populate the cell which we have created right now, and then subscribe. It's already subscribed here. We need to just drive and then dispose by the bag. We need to create a bag over here. Let's create that bag quickly. So bag is done. Should not be, it's fine. Also we need to register the cells. So let's do the registration of the cells within over here. Let Chatroom cell nib. Okay, first thing is TableView dot register for register using the nib for cell reuse identifier. This is what we are going to use, and we need to create that nib of the cell. So let's create that Chatroom cell nib. So that's going to be UI nib, accepting the class and the bundle. So class name is going to be Chatroom cell, which we created now, and the bundle is going to be bundle for class, which is Chatroom cell dot self is the bundle. So that's created. I can now pass that here, and cell for reuse identifier, we can do a trick over here. We can just say string of describing cell describing what on what. So that should be the Chatroom cell dot self. So it's itself describing itself. So I'm just using that Chatroom cells value itself, so that you can easily reuse it over here as well. So cell is registered now. Now all that we need to do is to load it within the data source. Right now we have loaded something like a UI table view cell, but we need to actually load our cell. So for that I'm going to call guard let cell equals table view dot reuse dequeue register cell with reuse identifier and index path. So identifier we created already, like describing subject, which is our Chatroom cell dot self, and the index path is going to be the same index path. That's my cell, and I need to cast it to Chatroom cell. So if that is the case, else I will return a regular, maybe like a normal cell. Otherwise I'm just going to configure, I'm going to return this cell. So it should not give me an issue right now, but I also need to configure it using the view model, which is the item which is coming along here. So these are for each cell. It identifies the sections and the items within it and gives me that. So that's what I'm using to configure. I already have a configure function within the cell which is used to configure this cell. So I guess this will let you see the cell right now, because we have done the data source and the binding over here. So let's just run once and see. See, it's loading, but then it's also showing the empty view as well. So we need to get rid of this. So let's do that. Plus we need to add a height to this. So those are the two things pending right now. So let's do that. So let's do that. You can see it's need to set a height. Before that, let's set the binding for removing that empty view when you don't need it. So first thing, we need to move this to let's move it outside, like a private lazy init, private lazy var empty view equals empty view instantiation. Just move it inside and return that. Return empty view. And now okay, we also need all the empty images. All of this is needed. How much of code? Empty image. This is my empty view. Just copied a couple of times. Okay, that's it. Empty view is available for configuration now, and even we can get rid of this setting over here. Instead, we need to move it closer to the binding. So I'm just going to do that binding right now. Self.presenter. I'm just going to use this sections. I'm gonna map it and get the first section because we are only having one section. I'm just going to blindly do a transformation, force cast it to just one, and then again I'm gonna map it. It's going to give me an items array, and I'm going to check whether that count is greater than items count is greater than 0. That's like translate this into a boolean observable, and if it is greater than 0, I'm just going to say it's a bool. So I can always say greater than 0 means there is some value available. So I don't need to show the empty view at that point. So I can just say nil as the empty view should not be set at that point. If not, set the empty view. Maybe it's going to give me empty views. Why is it empty views? Empty view. Even we need to pass it as a, so it's table view is an optional, so we need to check that. So now this is done. All that now we need to do is convert that into a driver so that it runs in the main thread. It's already a driver, so we can just say drive and dispose bag. We already have the bag. So now I think it will not show you that empty view, because based on this condition, if there are no items then it's not going to show anything. If count is 0, it's going to show that empty view. So that's fixed now. One thing that we need now fix is the height of the table view. We need to set that to 90. So 90 should be fixing that too. Let's run, see what's going on. We need to again log in. This is something we are going to right now work on. Every time we are having to log in. Page 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm gonna get rid of that. So we are very close. This is how the implementation is. I just need to add one more image over here, and then I'm just gonna conclude this episode, and then we'll take up the other one where we are going to refactor a lot of things, where the user can directly once he's logged in, if he has that token, he directly goes to the main screen. Then if he logs out, he comes back to the login screen. Those things we are going to take up. Before that, I'm just going to add I think I can just say Chatrooms this image anyway. We don't have any binding right now, so I'm just going to blindly keep within the cell. I'm just going to go to the cell. Where is that cell? Chatrooms. Okay, let's create a section for cells. Cells added, and then this image view, I'm just going to directly add that image view. Image is going to be UI image named I think IC mail is what I'm going to add. IntelliSense is gone, but it's working in the background because this IC mail image is available for me within the assets. Where is my assets? Here, over here. IC mail is available here. I'm just going to show that one. I guess it should show me all the. Again, I need to log in. This is a little inconvenient right now, so I'm just going to modify my code to do that. So now I have all the chat rooms available. So you can see timestamp did not come back. So what happened? Because we did not have a binding over here. Timestamp view model dot timestamp. My IntelliSense is gone as driver. I think maybe blindly I'm just gonna do it right now and then get my IntelliSense back. Status, it's going to be timestamp label dot rx dot text and dispose by. Copy paste that one. Should not give me an error. I need to get back my IntelliSense. Status timestamp and label is bound. View, we just had a value. This is not going to come through right now, so I'm just going to keep it like this. But at least it's going to show that timestamp where I said echo or something. So I had created some of them yesterday and something like 6 days back, so it should show me like that. Yeah, so a week ago and 1 day ago I had created, so it's coming back right now. Maybe a sorting, we can apply that once we progress more, but that sorting right now is based on the chat room creations date, but then it's going to be later with the last message or something, and this is going to be dynamic in nature. So it is going to swap whenever new message is received. The top chat room is going to come at the top, and all those things are going to happen. But right now these are my chat rooms, and we are now going to implement this logout because that is needed right now, because every time I'm logging in, every time I'm having to log in right now instead of staying in the rooms, because I'm already a authorized user. I'm not using that authorized feature right now. So that's what we are going to do right now. Authorized, stay in this rooms, and then on logout we are going to the login screen. Those two plus retry logic is pending. Those two are, I think 2 more episodes are pending. So come back for the couple of more episodes which I'm going to take up right now. So until then, bye from me.